One day, he's everywhere. On every news channel, every magazine cover, every trending topic. His face is on billboards. His name is in every boardroom, every parliament, every conversation that matters. People fear him. People worship him. People want to be him. Then nothing. No arrest. No press conference. No farewell speech. No funeral. No goodbye. He simply stops existing. And here's the strangest part. Nobody panics. Nobody demands answers. The world just adjusts. Like he was never there. Like the space he occupied quietly closed around his absence. No one asks where he went. No one dares. And the ones who know, they're not talking. They're looking straight ahead. They're pretending they never knew his name. But you know, because you were in that room. Because you made the call. Because you're the reason a powerful man just vanished from the face of this earth. This is the story of how powerful people disappear. Not just one man. Not just one country. Not just one era. This happens constantly, quietly, efficiently, to billionaires who challenged the wrong system, to generals who knew about operations that never officially existed, to politicians who had files, real files, on the people above them. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how it works, exactly why we allow it, and exactly what it tells us about the nature of power itself. Let's establish something before we go further. We're not talking about celebrities who delete their Instagram and call it a mental health break. We're not talking about athletes who retire to a quiet life in the countryside. We're not talking about politicians who lose an election and go write a memoir. We're talking about something completely different. We're talking about people who held real power, structural power. The kind of power that doesn't just open doors. It decides which doors exist in the first place. People who sat in rooms where the real decisions happened. Not the decisions you see on television. The decisions behind those decisions. The ones that moved billions of dollars, repositioned armies, redrew alliances, and shaped the reality that the rest of us simply live inside. And then one day, without warning, without explanation, without any of the ceremonies that usually accompany the exit of someone so significant, they're gone. The most famous recent example is Jack Ma. In 2020, Jack Ma was the richest man in China, the founder of Alibaba, the architect of an empire that touched nearly every aspect of Chinese commerce. His net worth exceeded $50 billion. He was celebrated internationally. He gave TED Talks. He met with world leaders. He was, by every measure, untouchable. Then he gave a speech. In October 2020, at a financial summit in Shanghai, Jack Ma publicly criticized China's banking regulators. He called them outdated. He suggested that the state-owned banks operated with a pawnshop mentality. He was confident, sharp, and completely unaware that he had just crossed a line that no amount of money could uncross. Within days, the regulatory approval for Alibaba's massive IPO, which would have been the largest in history, was suspended. Within weeks, investigations were announced. Within months, Ant Group, his financial technology company, was restructured under government control. And Jack Ma himself, he vanished. For 3 months, he made no public appearances. No social media posts, no interviews, no sightings. A man who had been one of the most visible people on the planet simply ceased to be visible. When he finally resurfaced, something was different. He was smaller, quieter. He began spending time outside China. He gave up his positions. He spoke less. He became, in every practical sense, a private citizen. Even though his name still carried enormous weight. That transformation didn't happen naturally. It was engineered. That's not retirement. That's a message sent to every powerful person in China, and honestly, to every powerful person in the world. No matter how big you are, no matter how much money you have, no matter how beloved you are by the public, step out of line, and you will be reminded of your place. Jack Ma is just one example, one of the public ones, one of the ones we actually got to hear about because he was too famous to completely erase. Most disappearances are quieter. Most happen to people whose names never made international headlines. And most happen so smoothly that we never even notice the gap they leave behind. Here's something that the powerful never say out loud but always understand instinctively. The higher you climb, the more exposed you become. At street level, your mistakes are private. At mid-level, your mistakes are manageable. But at the top, at the absolute peak of power, you have no privacy. Everyone can see you. Everyone knows your secrets. Everyone is cataloging your weaknesses. Everyone is waiting for the moment you become more useful to them as an enemy than as an ally. Power is not a destination, it's a target. And when someone decides that you need to go, there are 5 methods they use. Each one is more sophisticated than the last. Method 1. The forced exit. This is the most straightforward. Someone with more power than you, or a coalition of people whose combined power exceeds yours, decides you've become a liability. Maybe you know too much about a decision that cannot become public. Maybe your popularity has grown to the point where you're now a threat rather than an asset. Maybe you've started making independent decisions, building your own alliances, your own base, your own agenda. When you were supposed to stay loyal, they come to you privately. There's no announcement, no drama, just a conversation in a quiet room. The message is simple: leave gracefully, or we will remove you in a way that leaves nothing graceful behind. Most people, when they fully understand the alternative, choose grace. They resign. They announce a desire to spend more time with family. They cite health concerns. They publish a dignified statement and disappear from public life within weeks. The world nods. The news cycle moves, and within a month, someone else is in their seat, and the powerful person who just left is already being spoken about in the past tense. Method 2. The golden cage. This is the one that looks from the outside like a victory. You're not fired. You're not exiled. You haven't been disgraced. In fact, you've been elevated. Congratulations. Here is a prestigious title. Here is a corner office. Here is a salary that would make most people's eyes water. But look closely at what you've actually been given. No direct reports. No budget authority. No seat at the table where real decisions are made. You've been promoted into irrelevance. Your title is impressive. Your power is gone. And because it looks like success, no one asks questions. Your allies assume you're fine. The public, if they're paying attention at all, sees someone thriving. The organization continues, now free from whatever inconvenience you represented. You attend the events. You give the speeches. You smile in the photographs. But you're not in the room anymore. Not the real room. You have been disappeared, and everyone applauded while it happened. Method 3. The fabricated scandal. This one is the most brutal, because it doesn't just remove you from power, it removes you from history. A story appears. Sometimes it's completely invented. Sometimes it's a grotesque exaggeration of something minor. Sometimes it's entirely real but strategically timed and selectively released to cause maximum damage at a specifically chosen moment. It doesn't matter which. The effect is the same. In the age of digital media, a story travels faster than any denial ever can. By the time you've assembled a legal team, the story has been shared 10 million times. By the time you've prepared a statement, the counter-narrative has already formed and calcified in the public mind. Every denial you issue sounds like an admission. Every piece of evidence you present is dismissed as spin. Every ally who steps forward to defend you becomes associated with your disgrace. You are still physically present. You still exist. But your reputation, the thing that actually gave you power, has been surgically removed. And the people who engineered the story, they're nowhere to be seen. They're already 3 steps ahead, already focused on the next problem, already watching someone else become the story. Method 4. The voluntary vanishing. This is the one that surprises people the most, because this one is a choice. Some powerful people reach a moment, usually after watching what happened to someone else, where they do the calculation clearly and completely. They look at what they have: a life, a family, accumulated wealth, relative security. They look at what they're risking by staying visible, by continuing to accumulate power, by continuing to be the kind of person who attracts attention from the kind of people who make problems disappear. And they decide, with clear eyes, that the trade is not worth it, so they begin the process of becoming invisible. Gradually at first, fewer public appearances, less engagement with media, a stepping back that looks, to casual observers, like simply getting older or losing interest. Then more definitively, a move to another country, a withdrawal from boards and organizations, a quiet life in a place where no one particularly cares who you used to be. The world forgets them. And this, exactly this, is what they wanted. Not legacy, not recognition, just survival. Just the ordinary life that most people take completely for granted. Method 5. The permanent disappearance. We say this part carefully, because this isn't speculation. This is documented historical reality. Not every powerful person who vanishes gets to live quietly somewhere warm with a new name and a peaceful routine. Some disappearances are permanent. Some people who knew too much, who had documentation, who were scheduled to testify, who had made clear they were not going to stay quiet, they simply stopped being alive. Jeffrey Epstein, a high-security federal facility, 24-hour observation, cameras, guards. Every conceivable precaution. Dead. Cameras malfunctioning. Guards asleep. Medical examiner initially noting injuries inconsistent with suicide. Case closed. Boris Berezovsky, Russian oligarch, fled to London. Became a vocal critic of the Kremlin. Found dead in his bathroom. Ruled a suicide. His closest friends and associates to this day do not believe that. We don't need to present a verdict. We simply note these people were powerful, they were inconvenient, and they are gone. The circumstances of their departure were unusual, and the people with the most to gain from their silence have never been meaningfully held to account. Power protects itself. That is not a theory. That is the consistent lesson of recorded human history. Here is the part of this story that should genuinely disturb you. We let it happen. Not because we're cowards, not because we're complicit, but because of something that is wired so deeply into human psychology that most of us never even notice it operating. The first mechanism is called diffusion of responsibility. When an event happens publicly, when it unfolds in front of a large group, every individual in that group assumes that someone else will respond. Someone else will ask the question. Someone else will demand the accountability. Someone else will make the call. And so, collectively, no one does. The news covers the disappearance for a news cycle. Commentators speculate. Social media briefly lights up. And then something else happens. Something louder, something more immediate. And the attention shifts. The algorithm moves. The human brain, always scanning for the next stimulus, follows. The second mechanism is the halo effect. When someone is powerful, genuinely, visibly, undeniably powerful, we unconsciously apply a kind of moral credibility to everything connected to them. We assume that the system which produced them and then removed them must have had good reason to do so. We assume that if they disappeared, perhaps they deserved to disappear. We fill the gap in our knowledge with justifications, because the alternative, accepting that we live in a world where the powerful can simply be erased, is genuinely too uncomfortable to hold. And the third mechanism is the most important: normalization. When disappearances happen with enough regularity, when they become, at some level, expected, they stop feeling like events and start feeling like weather. Unfortunate, perhaps. Uncomfortable to think about, certainly. But ultimately, inevitable. The systems that make people disappear understand all three of these mechanisms perfectly. They plan around them. They time their actions to coincide with competing news stories. They construct narratives that activate the halo effect. They rely on normalization to ensure that the discomfort fades before it can organize into anything like accountability. The most effective disappearance is not the one that happens in secret. It's the one that happens in full public view, and that everyone, through a combination of psychology, distraction, and learned helplessness, simply decides not to examine too closely. Step back far enough, and the pattern becomes impossible to miss. Across centuries, across continents, across every political system that human beings have ever constructed, democracy, autocracy, monarchy, oligarchy, theocracy, the same sequence repeats. Power concentrates in the hands of the few. Those few know things, real things, documented things, dangerous things, about each other and about the systems they operate within. At some point, one of them becomes inconvenient. And then, one way or another, they are removed. The methods change. The technology changes. The public justifications change. The underlying logic never does. Jack Ma, China 2020, too popular, too critical, too independent. Carlos Ghosn, Japan 2018, arrested on financial charges that many analysts considered selectively applied, held for months, then made one of the most dramatic escapes in modern history, smuggled out of Japan inside a box on a private jet. Jeffrey Epstein, United States, 2019, dead before he could testify about the most powerful people in the world who had attended his properties and participated in what investigators described as systematic abuse. Boris Berezovsky, United Kingdom, 2013, found dead months after writing a letter to Vladimir Putin asking permission to return to Russia. His family never accepted the suicide ruling. Different countries, different methods, different public explanations, same pattern. Every time. Power does not tolerate loose ends. And the people who understand power, who have spent their lives inside it, know this better than anyone. Here's the thing nobody says at the end of these stories. The most significant disappearance isn't the person, it's the truth they carried. Every time someone is removed, silenced, exiled, discredited, or simply erased, a version of reality goes with them. The files they held, the conversations they remembered, the testimony they would have given, the decisions they could have explained. Gone. And the world that remains is subtly, permanently different, slightly less informed, slightly more shaped by whoever decided that this particular person needed to stop being visible. You've been watching this channel because something in you refuses to accept the surface version of events. Because you look at the official story and feel the gap between what you're being told and what is actually true. That instinct is worth protecting. The question was never whether powerful people disappear. They do. They always have. The documentation is overwhelming, the history is clear, and the pattern is undeniable. The real question, the one that actually matters, is this: who decides who disappears? Who gave them that authority? And why do the rest of us, with everything we know and everything we can see, continue to look away? The most dangerous person in any room is the one who just left it. If this video made you think, subscribe, because this is only the beginning. Next video, the fixer. The person hired to make powerful people disappear, and what happens when the fixer himself becomes inconvenient. Drop a comment below. Which disappearance on this list do you think was truly voluntary? And which one do you think had no choice at all? I'm SavantPOV, and this is just the surface.